Hey, so this last piece that we're going to talk about that I'm doing is give me a minute. This last piece, is called Rhythm Song. It's written by Paul Smadbeck, and this piece is definitely considered to be, one of the kind of staples in our solo marimba literature. You can't really talk about solo marimba work without mentioning this piece at some point or another. It's roughly 9.5 minutes. I'm playing the whole thing. It's by far the longest piece I've had to learn and memorize. There's a certain passages inside this piece that have definitely challenged me, and even now, a week a week out from the recital, that I still have some inconsistencies with. But I cannot confidently say that this is the hardest piece I've had to learn, but there's definitely moments in here that have definitely tested my four mallet marimba skill and technique. But I digress. The reason, when I first heard this piece about a year and a half ago, I knew this was a piece that I wanted to do for this recital. It reflects Journey in Darkness, I think, at its core. And so this piece for me is all about the process. And the process being day-to-day life and activities. I should probably make this clear and put this tangent in real quick. I'm in no way trying to change why Smadbeck wrote this piece, what it meant to Smadbeck at the time when this piece was written and when it was released. I'm not trying to change any of that, because I think my interpretation is better. That is so far from the truth. But when I first heard this piece and I had kind of the emotional response that I had to it, I knew I wanted to reflect that message out during this recital. So that's all this is, and that's the same for the other three pieces that we're doing. So anyway, I know something my friends and my peers kind of get sick and tired of me talking about all the time, but it's something that I believe in, and I will continue to discuss and agree with, is that notion that life doesn't stop for us when we want it to, when we need it to, when it's convenient for us. No matter what happens in life, the sun will always rise and the sun will always set. And life happens. Life happens to everyone. In that kind of in those dark moments where it's best for us to lay in bed for 6 hours at a time because our mental is telling us that, hey, that's what we're going to do today. Even when all that's happening, we're having these depressed, emotional, anxiety attacks. Life, to put bluntly, life doesn't care. Life is going to keep moving on, and life is going to keep going. And I really felt that this piece is a really good representation of that idea. And I'll place some examples here for you throughout. But you know, so there's a passage in here. This passage, these succession of notes, this really, for me, is this reflects the idea of just whatever your day-to-day normal process is. Waking up in the morning, brushing your teeth, getting ready, going to school or work, and whatever objectives or activities that may come with that. Going home after, you know, eating meals throughout the day. Like, the point I'm trying to make is that this is all about whatever that normal day-to-day life activity is. And so whenever you hear, and it'll happen in different octaves throughout the piece, but whenever you hear the following, that's just representing normal, everyday life. And so, as that's happening, we'll get to the point in this piece where double stops start happening. And for those of you who don't study music, which is okay, double stops is when two mallets hit two different notes at the same time. So that's a lot of this. So instead of one after the other, it's just at the same time. And so when this piece starts having these double stops come in, these double stops represent all those thoughts that start to sneak in that don't exactly help us. And they could be anything. Obviously, I'm going to be as transparent as I can be with this and provide examples from my own life, but you know, I don't want those examples to be the only examples. If you relate to some of them, that's great, and there are more than likely other examples that you could think of that are better fit for you, and that's totally okay too. When these double stops start to come in, they come in soft, they come in quiet, and they're not really the important aspect of what's happening musically. And I feel like that's very reflective of when, you know, we kind of fall into these pits at times. It starts with a thought or two, and they don't start all of a sudden as like the forefront or the focus of what is going on with us. They're usually in the back of our mind, and they start to accumulate over time. So the way this piece kind of reflects that, pretty much everything I just said, is when those double stops start to come in right after we've had moments of this already kind of happen. And so we have now established that day-to-day life is going on, and as that's happening, these double stops come in, and that, you know, reflects the notion that these thoughts that we struggle with are starting to manifest. So as a little bit of an example. I'm hoping that's obvious. This those are the double stops that I'm talking about. And as the piece goes on, those notes will change, but that idea of those two notes happening together at the same time really represent that idea of that as life is happening, these thoughts are starting to creep in. Give me 1 second. feel better with that light being on in that room behind me. Okay, so, so yeah. When those double stops start, they come in, they're soft, they're not prevalent, and then at some point in the piece, they start to grow, and they get louder, and they get more intense, and not that they become the focal point of what's happening, but they're not as in the background as what they once were. And that can represent like the notion of, you know, did you do all your homework? No, you didn't. You didn't do all your homework. Okay, well, you know, that's gonna start affecting, you know, your classes. What about, did you practice all your scales? No. What about your rudiments? Did you practice your tuning? Because you suck at your tuning. We all know that your voice and your ears suck as shit, especially when it comes time to playing timpani. Did you focus on it today? No, huh? Well, then how can you say that? What about? So, are you ready for your lesson? No, huh? How can you say that you're 100% prepared for your lesson if you didn't focus on every little piece of it throughout the week? Can you not do all of it? Does that define then your worth or your value in the studio compared to your other colleagues or your peers? And how does, you know, and why do they learn all these other pieces way faster than you can do it? Why do you take longer to learn these pieces? Why can't you be as good as everyone else as fast at the same time? What about, you know, and had you been able to do that the first time, maybe you could have passed your juries the first time, you know, and maybe had you worked on your tuning, had you touched a 26 pedal for the first time, or at least once, you would have passed that jury, right? Or what about that time where you took your French trust? You remember your French trust, and you totally just like spat that down on the ground, and now it's gone to shit. Or what about all the times like why can't you? You know, how about she told you when she wanted to date somebody like you, but didn't want to date you? Or how about, you know, when you lost a mentor or a colleague or somebody that you loved and they finally died from cancer? Or how about when your cousin was shot and killed in cold blood for no freaking reason? Or how about that friend that reached out to you right before she committed suicide because you're the last line of defense and you couldn't have been there? And what about, you know, all these mistakes that you said you weren't going to make and you keep making these same mistakes? How does it define your worth? Why are you worthless? And it takes one thought, one small thing, to do all your homework, and all of a sudden it's exploded into these bigger issues, and we allow that to define ourselves. We allow our minds to manipulate us to determine what we think our worth and value should be. And, you know, I don't really know, or I have all the answers. And if these are things that you also struggle with, same as me, I wish I had just a magical sentence that can make all of it make sense and give reason as to why this is. But the point I'm trying to make is that these thoughts, these feelings, these emotions, they're real. They are very real. And we can no longer say to those that we love and care about or that we're friends with who are struggling with these things, we can no longer just be like, oh, it'll be fine. Things will get better, you know, and just kind of sweep it under the rug. And again, I know I've mentioned that and some of these other pieces, and again, that's the point of this whole recital is taking these dark emotions and these dark feelings and not just putting a spotlight on them, but letting you know that if these are things that like we struggle with, you're not any less than, you're not alone, and these are, having emotions and feelings is perfectly human and normal and natural. And because we struggle with these things doesn't mean that we're any less than or it takes our value away. It just makes us human. All of that will be tied in together when you come to the recital and read the program notes. There's a bit at the very end, the very end, that kind of takes all these different pieces, all these different emotions, and kind of puts them all together. And my main message is in those program notes. So when you come to the recital next week, all that will be in there. I can't give away everything. I really like the end of this piece because I think it's really accurate in its reflection of there's times that we go about in our life where we think we're in the clear, right? We don't have these thoughts as often as we used to. We're not affected by certain dark elements that exist out there as much as we used to, and we think that like, oh well, maybe we're good. We're good, right? Like those are all done. And then when we least expect it, bam, we're right back into it. And we never really know when we finally have the last of being affected by these negative things, we never really know when it's really the last time we're going to let those things bother us. Wow, words are hard. I hope that made sense. The example that I'm thinking of right now is like when somebody passes away unexpectedly, or that friendship that you no longer have unexpectedly. It's really hard at times to think about when the last time you saw them or what your interaction was, because you don't fully realize that was the last time that you were going to talk or have an interaction with them, because you don't know, obviously what was about to come. And so that I really like this ending because it reflects that idea. What's happening musically is that there's this passage that's happening that again kind of represents this notion of day-to-day activity, and it has a lot of these double stops that are continually, at this point, they're just on a consistent hammering away, and they're prevalent, and they just keep happening. And so when you have the two that's happening at the same time, and out of that passage a note is being taken away one at a time, until you're left with just kind of like the one fundamental note or core, and it sounds like the piece is ending, and then all of a sudden, boom, everything comes right back in. And it's that notion that I had just talked about, where when we think we're finally done with being hindered by some of these thoughts or these emotions, that sometimes when we think we're done, they all of a sudden come right back. And I thought the ending of this piece, the way it sounds, is really reflective of that. So just to kind of key you in on what I'm thinking about as I'm playing this piece, and what this piece represents with the meaning of the recital. It's more than just the 14 pages of notes that I'm just trying to, I guess, ram through, but there's a little bit more of a deeper emotional connection. And so, not that I'm asking you to be sad, but please keep this video in mind as you're hearing it. I think it'll really help with the meaning and the message that I get the opportunity to share with all of you that night. So yeah, go Dogs.